Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak, your podcast available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Monday the 12th of May in London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, stock markets gain after Washington and Beijing offer positive signals on their weekend trade talks, with more details expected today.
The UK's Labour government moves to rein in migration amid growing support for Reform UK.
Plus, it's just the beginning. Traders bet the euro's ascent is a tidal wave in the making.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Stock markets are rising after the US and China announced they had made headway in 2 days of trade talks in Switzerland. While neither side disclosed specifics, both agreed to establish a new framework for negotiations, led by US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier Lifeng. Speaking after Sunday's talks, Bessent struck an optimistic tone.
I'm happy to report that we made substantial progress between the United States and China in these very important trade talks. First, I want to thank our Swiss host. The Swiss government has been very kind in providing us this wonderful venue, and I think that led to a great deal of the productivity we've seen. We will be giving details tomorrow, but I can tell you that the talks were productive.
Bessent says the US plans to share more details today, while Lifeng promised a joint statement. It comes after President Trump increased tariffs on Chinese imports to 145%, and China responded with tariffs on US goods of 125%.
The UK will make it harder for migrants to stay in the country in the latest attempt to shrink Britain's record levels of net migration. The Labour government plans to change visa rules, toughen up English language tests and tighten rules on overseas recruitment. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it'll help to bring the numbers down.
Those changes, the combination of just those low-skilled visa changes and also the care worker changes, together, that is a reduction of probably in the region of up to 50,000 low-skilled worker visas, a reduction in the course of this year alone.
The Home Secretary's new policy comes after years of debate around Britain's high migration levels. Support for the government has fallen to a 5-year low in opinion polls. YouGov's latest poll has the party at 22% and the anti-immigration Reform UK party taking the lead with 29%.
Volodymyr Zelenskiy says he will be waiting for Vladimir Putin in Turkey on Thursday. The leaders of Russia and Ukraine are being pushed to begin peace talks by the United States and Europe. Ukraine's president says Kyiv is ready to end this war.
Ukraine, we have absolutely no problem engaging in negotiations. We are ready for any format. I will be in Turkey this Thursday, the 15th of May, and I expect Putin to come to Turkey as well.
Zelenskiy's planned trip comes after US President Donald Trump insisted the two leaders meet despite Moscow's reluctance to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. The UK and other European countries say they are readying a dramatic increase in sanctions on Russia should Putin not engage with negotiations.
A ceasefire has been agreed between India and Pakistan after some of the worst fighting in more than half a century. US President Donald Trump is reported to have angered key Indian officials on Saturday by announcing the agreement on Truth Social before they could. The way the ceasefire unfolded may have helped set the stage for even more intense fighting down the road. In Pakistan, news of the ceasefire was met with fireworks and celebrations. The head of India's foreign ministry, Vikram Misri, issued a statement over the weekend.
It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours.
That was India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri speaking there as both sides have reported drone attacks on their borders with Kashmir just hours after the announcement was made.
The US and Iran have agreed to continue talks about the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. The news comes after discussions over the weekend were described as encouraging by Washington and useful by Tehran. However, Iran's foreign minister reiterated that Iran's ability to enrich uranium, a key sticking point in negotiations, isn't up for discussion. Oman's foreign minister, who'd mediated the talks, says a fifth round of deliberations will take place after the delegations consult with their respective leaderships.
President Trump is heading to the Middle East today, aiming to tap into billions of dollars in potential investment. The visit to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar comes as ABC News has reported that the Trump administration is set to accept a luxury Boeing jet from Qatar's royal family. Reports suggest that the aircraft may be the most valuable gift ever received from a foreign government in the US. Speaking on Truth Social, President Trump suggested the 747 jet would be a gift, quote, to replace the 40-year-old Air Force One temporarily after delays prevented Boeing delivering two new versions that were ordered during President Trump's first term.
Pharmaceutical stocks have dropped after President Trump announced plans to sign an executive order later aimed at significantly reducing US prescription drug prices. With more, here's Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo.
While the details remain unclear, the president claims the order will require that Americans pay no more than the lowest price charged for the same medication in any other country. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the move could lower US drug prices by as much as 80%. Americans currently pay the highest prices in the world for prescription medications. However, drug makers argue that such reforms would cut into their revenues and undermine the development of breakthrough therapies that could extend and improve lives. In London, Tiwa Adebayo, Bloomberg Radio.
Let's look at the markets then after our top stories. Asian stocks rising on this trade war de-escalation. We await a further news, of course, today. But at the moment, S&P 500 E-mini futures are off to a flying start, up by 1.5%. Nasdaq futures up almost 2% this morning. US Stoxx 50 futures also up 0.8%. Germany's Xetra DAX index closed at a record high on Friday, recovering after a major slump in March. The dollar's also strengthening against traditional havens. So the Bloomberg dollar spot index up 0.1%. You've got global bonds in retreat. 10-year US yields up a couple of basis points. Gold has also tumbled. We're down 1.4% currently. Shares of Asian pharmaceutical companies, though, have fallen on this idea that we'll perhaps see President Trump trying to slash US prescription drug prices. And the India-Pakistan truce sees Pakistani stocks surging 9.2% overall. India's Nifty 50 jumping 3%.
Well, in a moment, we'll bring you more on what we learned from those US-China trade talks, plus why some traders are betting on the euro continuing to strengthen. But first, a word on another story that caught our eye this morning. It's that time of year where you're starting to think maybe about your summer holidays after some recent good weather. This unfortunately falls into the category of articles that I cannot avoid reading and then feeling bad about all of my choices when it comes to travelling. This is Travel Hacks from what Bloomberg Pursuits are dubbing a group the Distinguished Travel Hackers.
Yeah, they're absolutely brilliant. So this is Damon John, who's one of the Shark Tank judges, and he does, I just can't believe how many miles he travels. 400,000 miles in the air every year. Spends something like 250 days a year travelling. He says you always must carry a silk scarf on flights. I totally sympathise. Double book connections and just stay hungry, even if you feel jet lagged.
I can't agree with that one. That's a step too far for me. Silk scarf, fine, but I have to eat. Right, you could read more on that Bloomberg.com/pursuits. Well, let's bring you more on our top stories now. China and the US have both said that this weekend's trade talks produce substantial progress. It's the clearest sign that further escalations of the trade war may be avoided. They've promised more details to come today. Let's bring in our Greater China Executive Editor, John Liu, for more. John, great to talk to you. What then have we learned from these 2 days of meetings, and what are we hoping for or expecting today?
Well, what we have so far is rhetoric, and the rhetoric that we've gotten has been very positive. We have Secretary Scott Bessent saying progress was made. We had Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng actually complimenting the American delegation. And so everything seems to be pointing to de-escalation, seems to be pointing to talks aimed at trying to resolve this trade war that we have on our hands, and we're just waiting for the details now.
Okay, how much are the markets, though, taken away from this?
It's obviously risk on today. U.S. stocks are up. Chinese stocks are up. They're down a bit from their session highs. Gold is down. So I think people are feeling better about the situation, and I would say they see a light at the end of this tunnel. A lot depends on what will be in the details. We have just gone through a month of great volatility in markets. Chinese stocks just recouped all of their losses since Liberation Day today. And so I think everybody's a bit on edge still.
John, tariffs are already hitting US businesses. They're a risk of a stagflationary blow to the US. But how much is at stake for China's economy in these talks as well?
There's a lot at stake for Chinese companies who export well over $500 billion US dollars to the United States. It's a huge market for Chinese goods. If these tariffs stay in place, there is not going to be any trade between the United States and China, and the threat of decoupling, I think, would have massive implications not only for China but for the global economy. And the prospect of something less than 100% no trade, something less than what we have now, I think, is very optimistic and is getting people feeling good about the future, and it will be good for the Chinese economy. The government is introducing lots of stimulus. If it can keep some of that trade with the U.S., that will help a lot.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you so much, John, for being with us this morning. Bloomberg's Greater China Executive Editor, John Liu.
Well, as President Trump reconfigures global trade, the euro is riding its biggest rally in 2 decades. And traders, including Amundi and Templeton, say it's just the beginning. The common currency jumped by 14% to the 3.5-year high last month. Joining us now for more, our FX and rates reporter, Naomi Tojitsu. Naomi, good morning. So the tide could be turning in favour of the euro. What does this mean?
So the euro has been staging a massive comeback after it fell close to parity against the dollar earlier this year. It's been a really big beneficiary of the sell-off that we've been seeing in the dollar after Trump's tariff announcement. And investment houses like Amundi and also Deutsche, they believe that it stands to rise to around 120 by the end of the year.
So then, I mean, because obviously the trade war is ongoing and that is perhaps one of the key drivers, but why do you think this is happening now?
So if we look at the move that we've seen in the dollar, that's really key. Like for the past 15 years or so, European investors, they've been investing abroad, and a lot of this has been going into the US, like US stocks and bonds, because they believe that US growth would outpace the rest of the world, and that rates in the US would be higher than in a lot of other countries. And that's been true for years, but over the past few months, we've seen Trump's policies, and they've raised a lot of uncertainties, and they've raised a lot of questions about how secure U.S. assets are. And this is a really big deal because U.S. assets, and especially U.S. treasuries, they're considered to be among the safest assets in the world. And this is what's triggered a sell-off in the dollar, and the euro has benefited from this.
So where does the euro go from here then? We've seen this strengthening since, as you say, that low and near parity only a couple of months ago. Since then, the trajectory has been largely upward. Does that look likely to continue?
It has, it's been upward. It could continue. It's trading around 112 at the moment, but a growing number of investors and banks believe that it could rise more. Like Deutsche, for example, is forecasting it to rise to 120 by the end of the year, and then even more to 130 by 2027. And that's a huge jump from where we are now. A lot of people believe that this will be driven by diversification flows. So that means that in the coming years, as European investors, as they start to pare back their investments in the US, like even just a little bit, like whether it's by shifting funds out of the US or decreasing the amount of new investments into the US, this could push the euro even higher.
Yeah, that's very positive, isn't it, in terms of how the euro is being seen. What do you think the risks are to that sort of very optimistic scenario?
Okay, so in terms of risks, if we see the US significantly dial down its tariffs on Europe and on other countries, Or if Trump tones down his other aggressive policy positions, that could help to encourage the view that, the US still is a secure place to keep investments. And then at the same time, the euro has been benefiting on this view that Germany and other European countries will increase fiscal spending. And if they're slow to do this, and if their economies are slow to grow as a result of this, it could have a negative impact on the region. And this could make people think that maybe shifting money back to Europe isn't the right thing to do. And this could hold the euro back from gaining further.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.